Howdy, it's Liz. I wanted to talk a little bit about using scrapbook paper in a junk journal and how I select and cut it. And one of the things that a lot of people ask is how they cut paper to fit into the journal and what type of cutter you are using. This is a very commonly asked question. I have in the past used guillotine cutters. They scare the crap out of me. I'm not going to kid with you. I have nightmares about chopping off a finger. So I like the rolling circular blade cutters myself. I have also used X-Acto knives and straight edges. Those are perfectly fine if you feel comfortable with that. I've used that a lot. The problem with that is it's a little harder to cut through multiple pages if you want to do that. I got a new cutter, I think for either my birthday or Christmas last year. This is a Fiskars cutter, and the depth I have my camera, I can't zoom out anymore, so you really can't see the whole thing. It is large. That is the disadvantage of this cutter. It is reliable. I like it. I have another one, an earlier version of Fiskars that doesn't have a very long cutting platform, and it has a ruler that extends out, and it was not very accurate. It was hard for me to read the numbers on the ruler. The one with the cutting platform is very easy to read. There are a couple of things I don't like so much about this cutter, but it's sort of the nature of the cutters. There is a clear plastic flap bar here that you slide the paper under, and it provides a little space to tell you where the blade is going to be and keep your fingers out of it, but it also, the weight of it is designed to keep the paper in place. If you are cutting very narrow items, it's difficult because this plastic flap is almost 2 inches wide, and it's hard to get a thin piece of paper under here. Now, obviously, I'm not cutting a lot of things that are this narrow. This is only 1 inch, but you can see that the bar covers it. I can't manipulate it. What I have done when I'm cutting really narrow things is I actually hold it on the blade side and straighten it this way. Pull it out a little bit and then push it in and then run the blade along there, which is in this little housing, and it can rest at either end, and that's fine. The other thing is that I don't like about this one in particular is that it has guides here, and these guides are 12.5 inches apart essentially. So you can't put anything in here that is larger than 12.5 inches, even though the platform is a little bit larger and it could accommodate it. And I'm assuming they have one at the top for left-handed people or using it in both directions. But if they had left these off on one end, then you could put up to a 13 or 14 inch paper here. And if you buy scrapbook paper commercially, you know that sometimes they have an extra 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch on there with the label from the manufacturer, and you have to cut it in the other direction first, or cut that tab off before you can cut into that paper. So that's a little annoyance. And my third and biggest annoyance with this is that you have to watch at all times to make sure that your paper is lined up correctly. I think that this formed plastic guide is off. It's a micron, it's a hair, it's a tiniest amount, but it really bothers me that the paper, if I'm cutting it and it's flush here, it will be a little bit off. So I need to not keep the paper flush with this bar here. I need to just tweak it up just the tiniest little hair on one end so that it actually cuts straight along here. The most effective way that you are going to get a good cut on this is to have good lighting so that you can see where the edge is that you are going to be cutting along. And it takes practice. If you haven't used one of these, getting a good square cut, it takes practice. I also just recently acquired a professional version of this type of cutter because I now have an oversized printer and I need to cut oversized pieces of paper because they don't fit in here. And I think it's an 18-inch cutter. Maybe it's a 19-inch cutter. Yeah, I think it's a 19-inch cutter or 20-inch because I want to cut 13 by 19 paper and I had to get a cutter that was big enough to do that. Anyway, so I'm going to turn this back around so you're not going to be able to see the whole thing. I like this cutter. This is very good for commercial use. Oh, excuse me, for home use. The other thing I like about it is that there is a bigger cutting platform. This goes out to 12 inches here, 13 inches is marked on it, and that's in the inset here. So this is nice. The problem with this, and this is a very common problem, or it's a problem that a lot of people are going to run into. This is where the fold is. This clear line, it's where the platform folds out. And this right here is the 6 1/4 inch mark. The 6 inch mark, there isn't one. It's in the fold. And how many times do we want to cut 12-inch paper in half? We want to cut it 6 inches. You need to eyeball it right here to get a 6-inch cut. That is another annoying feature, I have to say. It's a very annoying feature. But other than that, it's good. I haven't had to replace the blades. I have cut a lot on this machine, and so far it's been pretty good. It doesn't, as with all cutters, it doesn't quite cut the amount of paper that they say they will. I mean, if they say they cut 12 sheets, you can probably do 8 without too much of an issue. But that's all cutters. It really is. So I'm working on a project that is for a junk journal, and I measured my junk journal. It's 9.5 inches tall. That's the actual height of the spine that I'm using. When I'm cutting paper for a junk journal, I do not cut to the height of the spine. I cut it 1/2 inch less if I'm putting it into a hardcover book, particularly if I'm making a mini, I might cut it all the way to the edge. Hardcover book, no. If you look at any hardcover book before you take it apart, there is about 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch, depending on the publisher and manufacturer of the book, between the top of the spine and the top of the pages. And I have one here. Let me just grab a book here. Okay, so this is just a book of sketch paper, but it's black and white, so you can see it really easily. Here's the paper, and you can see the black edge of the book around there. It's not very much. This is probably closer to 1/8 of an inch, and it is that way on this side as well. That protects the pages from damage. And when you're working on a junk journal, you want to protect your pages from damage. You also, if you are a person who sticks all kinds of things in your junk journal, add a little bit more space there. You've got paper clips coming out, you've got fabric, you've got tabs. If you've got embellished paper clips, those babies are going to stick out this far. Give yourself a little bit of room, okay? So I measured my book. This isn't it. It's being decoupaged and it's drying. It's 9.5 inches this way and 6 inches from here to here. So my scrapbook paper is 12 inches wide. So I'm not going to cut for the width because I know that I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to cut the height, and I'm going to cut it down to 9 inches so that there's going to be 1/4 of an inch at the top and the bottom in the spine when it's sitting there. So one of the things you have to do is on your scrapbook paper, you have to figure out what part you're going to use and what part you're going to cut away. This is the paper that I am using on my cover. I'm using a version of it that is printed on parchments. I'll just show you that here. And I did a separate video on decoupaging that. This is an extra piece. This is how it is printed on white paper. This is printed on parchment. So that is drying. So I'm debating what section of this paper to use for the interior pages. The area that I am using on the cover is this top part. So the question is, do I cut it and use this bottom part with this cute little flower? And I think I will. So I'm going to flip that around and cut this down to a flat 9 inches. When you're cutting paper, make sure that it is flush here, because sometimes the paper curls up and it's really easy to get it a little skewed this way. And as I said, this cutter does not cut exactly. It's, you know, a micron off. So if you look at it, and I don't even know if you can see that the lines here are running a little bit crooked. Anyway, we're just going to go with it. When you're cutting, hold this bar down, hold the paper in place, because if you don't, it will slither. And as I said, I'm not cutting it down in this direction. I'm going to fold it here and it will go into the book, and I'll be decorating the backs probably as well. So I'm going to cut a few pieces of paper and select the portions that I want. This is a collection by Digital Curio. It's a digital paper. I bought it on Etsy and I'm using it for this project. And this paper is symbolic of one of the things you have to decide when you're looking at scrapbook paper. The cameo version, the cameo part of the paper, the design is in the center. It's very clearly focused, and as you go around this, it gets less defined. So I'm going to have to cut 3 inches off. Which direction do I want the image to go, and which 3 inches do I want to cut off? And actually, as I'm looking at this paper, this is fuzzy and this is fuzzy, which is kind of interesting. Usually there's like a highlight in the center and then the areas around the outside are fuzzy. I'm going to say that side is fuzzier. So I'm going to cut that side off. It has a little bit less clear definition. Now, one of the things that I tend to do is if there's a side that I like less, I can put a pocket there. Or something that goes over the top. And this one is just a straight marbled pattern. I can pick any place on that. This one does have a directional print. And as I said, this one has that highlight in the center. And I'm going to cut off this part right here. This is the darkest. These two corners are darkest. And, well, I don't know. This has it's directional. All the dragons are standing. This end is the head, this is the foot. So do I cut off the darkest part, or do I leave the darkest part and cut off this part so it's brighter at the top and I put a pocket here? Let's do that. Let's do that. And I'm going to keep the best part of the marbled paper. So we'll cut two at once here. Sorry, lining up my papers so that I get them both in the same direction. And you will notice that these are not exactly the same size. I was playing with the cutter, my new cutter, so the width and height are a little bit different on some of these. All right. So I'll keep those. This one has no direction. This one does. Do I want the lace overlay or do I want more of the background? Oh, let's keep more background to get rid of some of the lace. This rolling cutter can cut either forwards or backwards, which is handy. This one has a little bit more blue on the bottom, so I'm going to keep that. This one, I'll chop off the top 3 inches. This one is directional as well. It's text, so you want to make sure that you have it running in the correct direction. I am cutting it this way. I will be folding it this way to go in the book so that the text will be running in the correct direction. Alright, here's another page with text. Let's see, will I chop off the whole title if I go down 9 inches? Yes. So what I do in a case like this where there's some space at the top and the bottom is I will go in and trim it from the top to bottom, which I don't like as well because you are left with smaller scraps. I like having big scraps to work with, but you're just working with the scrapbook paper you have. All right. And this one has a very interesting feature here, but I really like the foxing on this end of the paper. So I may keep this end. And this one again has the highlight in the center. So let's see. I'll cut these this way. All right. So when I am done, I will have, I think, 11 papers for the book and some nice scraps for tags and trims and things like that. I don't know if I said the name of this collection. This is by Digital Curio on Etsy, and this collection is called Witchwood. And I did a review of it and printing of it in video, so check out my YouTube channel if you want to see it in any more detail. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll stay with me for the different videos that I'm doing for this ABC book challenge. The challenge is put on by Dear Julie on her Facebook page, and look for her on YouTube. She makes good junk journal videos. Thanks so much. Take care.